Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on getting Project Marshmallow to run under its own power. The big unknown is really whether or not the controller is any good. So we're going to address that today. We're going to get everything connected just enough to see if it'll move under its own power, and then from there we can finish building this thing up. A couple of things that we need to address. When we put this lift kit on, the holes where the tie rod end goes, these were not tapered. So we actually bought a taper, 7-degree taper. We tapered those out. The problem that we're having now though is this, I don't know if you can see that. This bracket right here is not thick enough to accommodate the entire tie rod. So you can see this thing moves up and down in there. A temporary solution we came up with is just to print some small spacers. This will get us just to the point where we can just drive it up and down the street, make sure everything's going to work. We'll replace those with some steel spacers at some point before we sell this thing. We got the motor. We got to relabel that since we painted it. We cleaned it up. The controller heatsink, the one that came on the golf cart, every single bolt was seized up. We tried to drill those and remove those with an easy out, but that just did not want to work. So we're going to tap these, some new threads. I don't know if you can see that in there. Those are just smooth holes. We have those tapped and get that mounted, get the controller mounted to it. The throttle cable, one of the things that we noticed, I don't know if I can find it right now, there's a small cut here, and one of those wires is actually cut. So we'll do a quick repair on it just to see if this is going to work. From there, if it works, we'll do a proper repair. We did get the battery mounted. My son cut these brackets off that came with it. Those are where the factory hold down connects to. Obviously that we're not going to use that anymore, so we took those out. Got the Enjoy Bot mounted, forgot the name of it. We got the Enjoy Bot mounted, so that'll be powering the golf cart. So hopefully by the end of this video, this thing will be moving under its own power, and we can continue on. All right guys, so this is a little bit better view I was talking about earlier. We had to actually ream out these holes in this bracket here, because again, they weren't tapered for the tie rods when we bought it. The problem is once we ream those out, you can see part of that tapered tie rod shaft is now sticking through. So again, all we did was print some of these little spacers here, and you can see that takes up the space pretty well there. So this is only going to be used just to kind of get this thing up and running. And again, we'll replace these once once this thing is really roadworthy. All right guys, so we're going to tap these holes in this plate. Like I said earlier, these don't come threaded, so you can see we've tapped a couple here already. Be careful when you're tapping these. These taps can be very brittle. We're actually using a thread chaser earlier for this hole, and it broke off. So just be careful. This tool definitely helps out. I've used ratchets, wrenches before. See a lot of people using impacts. I don't do that just because they are brittle. And these holes are blind, so they actually bottom out. This isn't technically the right tap for these holes, but they are deep enough. And our bolts are short enough that we're going to be using that it's not going to be an issue. And you can actually see that this is tapered, so that first third or so is actually a bit narrower than the rest of it. But again, these holes are deep enough that we're going to get plenty of thread engagement for the bolts that we're going to be using. So it's pretty easy. You just get it started straight. Those first few turns are the most critical. That's what's going to set the angle of your hole. And so once you have it in, you're just going to keep going. Until it bottoms out. We'll back it out. If this was steel, you'd want to turn a couple times, back it out. Since this is aluminum, it's really not that big a deal. And you see all those shavings coming out from where we're cutting those threads. So we'll do the rest of these holes and we'll get this thing mounted on the golf cart. All right guys, so we got all these holes tapped. We're going to mount this thing up. We tapped all these holes with 1/4x20. Nice thing about these bottom ones, these are not blind holes, so just use whatever bolts we want here. These are a little long, but they'll work. The back ones I can't use these long bolts because it does they're not blind holes, but it will hit in that pocket right there. So we'll just use a little bit shorter bolts for those. And then once this is mounted, we can put the controller on it and the F&R switch. And find it right there. Now we got a nice brand new mount for our controller to sit on. Alright guys, so this is a stock controller. Have no idea if this thing works. It does look like there's been some heat damage to it previously. So we're going to go ahead and mount this thing up. I'm going to clean some of this off. But we'll mount this up, just see if it works. Hopefully it does. See the mess of wires back there? We're going to use those just to see if this thing works. But we'll end up making some new battery cables and cleaning that up and making that look a lot nicer once it's finally mounted. Alright guys, so we got thermal paste on there. And we go to mount it. Put it on there, kind of move it around a little bit, spread that paste out. There you go. There you go. Kind of tight quarters in here. You got smaller. Alright, should we rock and roll? Alright guys, next we're going to mount this F&R switch. This thing's pretty crusty. It's seen better days. But if it works, we'll pull it apart, we'll clean it up. If there's something wrong with this and it just does not want to work, we can get a new one for like 65 bucks I think on Amazon. Whole new assembly, new brackets, the whole 9 yards. So this is more just a proof of concept. In fact, I need a little bit larger bolts for this. It's actually going to need some washers, so I'll grab some washers real quick. Alright, next thing we're going to do is mount this motor. Normally this would be a lot more difficult, but since we have no body, this thing will slide right into place. And I got to figure out where the bolt holes are. I think I actually need to rotate that right around there. Make sure we're lined up. Should be good to go. Now what you don't want to do is have this thing sitting out a ½ inch and use the bolts to pull it in. The bolts are just there to make sure everything's secure. Ooh, a bunch of dirt in that one. Didn't clean it very well. Take this thing back off and clean it. Stop recording now. Alright, so the problem here is we had, looks like some dust or mud daubers or something like that got in there, so we're just gonna kind of clean out with only small engine cleaning brushes. You could also use a tap, but there's a lot of dirt and rocks and crap in there. You get stuck, so we're just gonna do that. Knock out any dirt that wants to fall out of there. Put it back on. There. Now we should be good to go this time. Now there's 4 bolt holes in the motor itself, but if there's only 3, you're gonna be able to access the differential housing in place, and that's fine. The other one can be hidden under here that there's just no access to. So get those on there, we get those tightened up, we get ready to run our cables. Alright, so the problem here is we had, looks like some dust or mud daubers or something like that got in there, so we're just gonna kind of clean out with only small engine cleaning brushes. You could also use a tap, but there's a lot of dirt and rocks and crap in there. You get stuck, so we're just going to do that. And we'll knock out any dirt that wants to fall out of there. Put it back on. There. Now we should be good to go this time. Now there's 4 bolt holes in the motor itself, but if there's only 3, you're gonna be able to access the differential housing in place, and that's fine. The other one can be hidden under here that there's just no access to. So get those on there, we get those tightened up, we get ready to run our cables. Alright, so we got everything hooked up on the Easy Go here. We did pull in the garage, it's a little warm out right now. Everything electrically is connected. So this is far from the final iteration. This is just proof of concept. Make sure everything works that it needs to drive. We bypassed the ignition switch. We don't need that just for testing. We got the battery hooked up, and hopefully this thing does not make any weird noises. All right, we got a green light. There's no smoke. Nothing's hot. So I think we're in business. I have no idea if the ITS is any good on this thing. We're gonna hope it is. So we'll get this thing moved out of the garage and we'll see if it'll move under its own power. All right, we got it pulled out, got everything cleaned off. So stop rolling and turn it on. Now we don't know if this thing's in reverse or forward because the last people removed the buzzer. So let's give it a go. dead?
Yeah.
Hold on. Try the other way. Try that. I didn't hear the solenoid clicking. Oh. Back to troubleshooting. All right, we're back. Figured it out. One thing I didn't hook up is the charger. Normally mounts right below the driver. Inside there is what's called an ignition airlock. Basically, when you don't have the charger receptacle plugged in, bridges the gap. So 36 volts is provided to the positive side of your solenoids. That way it can fire when you close the circuit on the accelerator. Since that's not there, there's no 36 volts going to the solenoid. So even though connectivity is good and everything like that, there's just no power coming across it so that it can close. So we're gonna make a quick jumper wire and then we'll try again. All right, second attempt. All right. Don't go on the street.
Don't?
No. All right. Woo! Oh, look at that. That's awesome. Little tire rub. We may need some spacers. Success. We still got some work to do that we haven't done yet. The kingpins need to be rebuilt. We'll clean up the hubs. Those may need new bearings. You can see the tire is hitting the leaf spring, so I got to figure that out. I don't know if there's built-in stops or anything, but we're definitely making progress, and we should have this thing up and running before too long. So stay tuned for episode 3, and we'll be with you.